Base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's January 15th. It's a Wednesday. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday, and it could end up being a Wednesday that goes down in a little bit of history for Major League Soccer. It's a big day if this gets officially announced today. It's all over TUDN, it's all over ESPN Deportes, it's all over Fox Deportes. I mean, the crawl right now, Javier Hernandez, nuevo jugador del LA Galaxy. It's being reported that Chicharito, it's a done deal, being reported that he could be introduced as early as Friday morning, could be headed to Los Angeles today, tomorrow. This is an interesting move, and I've seen all kinds of takes on it, and I want to get into that this morning, what the Chicharito effect could be on MLS. We're going to get into player development as well, and they kind of dovetail together just a little bit, and we'll get into all of that. We're also going to get you caught up on the latest in the NWSL as they had board meetings yesterday. They need to hire a commissioner. They need to get their TV deals done, but there's progress on all fronts, and we'll get you caught up on everything there. Lots of questions, from you guys. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday, so tweet them at us, at Soccer Down here. Let us know what you're thinking. Let's start with Chicharito, John. I mean, this is a unique situation, and I think you want to compare it maybe to David Beckham. You want to compare it maybe to Cuauhtemoc Blanco. Those moves were, over 10 years ago. MLS is in a very different place, and Chicharito is a very different figure. I mean, let's start here. LA Galaxy are going to get Chicharito. Mm-hmm. I think we can say that now. In the last few years, we've talked about it on this show many times. We've mentioned Houston, although that would be a big change in the way that they spend. The other one we've mentioned, and especially since they announced they were moving back to Soldier Field, is the Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
If I'm a Chicago Fire fan right now, and these numbers are accurate, and this is according to ESPN Deportes, these numbers are not crazy. Jose Ramon Fernandez of ESPN Deportes reporting that it's a $9 million transfer to Sevilla, $5 million a year in salary for Chicharito. If I'm a Chicago Fire fan, if I'm in the media in Chicago, I want answers as to why this wasn't pursued. And if it was, and he said he's not coming to Chicago, okay, that's fine. But there's no excuse for why Chicago couldn't spend that money. No
that
excuse
for me, that for me is two attainable figures. And everything that we have seen from an owner like Joe Mansueto, he wants to make the big splash. You want to be downtown. You want to play in Soldier Field. You've redone your look. All of these different things. And if you're willing to invest in those ways and try to make your product better, how is it that you do not spend the $9 million to bring him in, which, relatively speaking, I know it's an expensive amount of money, but at the same time, to bring in what Chicharito brings on the field, off the field, all the intangibles, all this kind of stuff, you want to make that big splash in your market. Why do you not invest that kind of money, knowing that your fan base and even the casual fan is going to be interested in wanting to see him play in your market? That $9 million and the $5 million, to me, if you wanted to make a splash, that to me seems like something that you want to invest in to get people in and get them through the turnstiles. Why Chicago? Once again, if we find out that Chicago was not on Chicharito's radar for whatever reason, not interested, whatever, okay, fine. But if we find out that they didn't even kick the tires on something like this, if I'm a Chicago Fire fan, I'm pretty hot.
I think you have to be, and there's just no excuse why if you're not chasing this one. So, it looks like he's going to end up with the Galaxy, which is not a huge surprise. I mean, if the Galaxy and Chicago are both going for it and Chicharito wants to play in a better team, he's going to go to LA right now. That's completely understandable. Chicago would probably have to spend more on that salary number to try to make up for it. they can't do that or they couldn't get his attention, then that's just what it is. But he's going to the Galaxy. So he's going into a team. Let's talk about this from a soccer perspective first. He's going into a team that will likely, in terms of the players around him and supporting him, likely Jonathan Dos Santos, Joe Corona sitting in the holding midfield. Sebastian Lletget will probably be pulling the strings as a number 10 or as an attacking 8. On the wings right now, it's Alexander Katai, it's Christian Pavón. You have Efrain Alvarez, who I think will see some time this year. Sasha Kljestan will probably see some time off the bench, starts here and there. And Chicharito up top. It'll be a 4-2-3-1. It'll be what Guillermo Barros Escaloto has kind of leaned to in his career. I think he's got pieces around him that can support him. Now, he's a player who needs service. He's a player who does thrive on that. He's not going to create his own goal as much as a player like Zlatan did. But he's not the same kind of player that with Zlatan, you didn't get much else out of him. It was play to him and let him figure it out. Chicharito, it's play to him in good spots in the 18 and let him score goals for you. It's different. And I think it will make this team be a more effective one. Now, the questions, he's 31 years old. Escaloto wants generally to have a team that can press and can play in that manner. Look, he couldn't last year with Zlatan. Are you going to be able to go to elements of that with Chicharito? Yeah, I think you can. I think you can mitigate his responsibilities defensively to keep him fresh. But, at his age, and you start to look back at the minutes played, he hasn't played a ton in the last couple of years. He's not coming in with the tread on the tires low. This season, he's played under 500 minutes at Sevilla in league play. At West Ham combined from 2017 to 2019, didn't get over 3,000 minutes in league play. Bayer Leverkusen, he started 20 and 25 matches in his 2 seasons prior to that. That's the last time he started 20 matches in a league season. This is a player who, we've seen it with the Mexican national team, doesn't look like he's slowing down. It's been one of the stranger careers when he made his move to Europe from Chivas, where he burst onto the scene with 21 goals at Chivas in his final year there. Goes to Manchester United, double-digit goals first 3 years, but never a consistent starter. 15 starts the first year, 18 the next year, 9 the next year. Not playing more than 30 games, was always that super sub. And I think he's had that kind of label stuck to him everywhere he's went. I think it's unfair. I think Chicharito brings you a ton of energy. I think he brings you a great goal-scoring ability inside the 18. And on the field, I think he'll be effective for the Galaxy. I don't know if he scores as many goals as Zlatan did, but I think he makes the team better.
Yes. And when you were laying out the history of his minutes and what he hasn't been doing the last handful of years, it reminded me of the Marcus Allen situation, if you wanted a football analogy. I know the situations were different, why he was sitting, but I think what you've done is you see someone who's 31 who hasn't been active, and you're looking at somebody who doesn't have that tread. You're going to probably get an extra season worth of work or an extra 2 seasons worth of work out of him if you put him in that up top and you have him starting as much as you anticipate that he does. I think that because he hasn't been as active, hasn't had as many minutes, hasn't had as much of that grind, I think that the Galaxy are getting, if you want me to use a young 31, then that would be probably how I would phrase it. You're getting a young-legged 31-year-old player up top.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair way to put it. Let's get to the other effect. And the fact that, we're 10 minutes in on Tudeane's morning show, and it's been all Chicharito.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that this got a reaction out of Spanish-speaking media in the United States that I don't remember ever seeing. This is a big deal because this is a big figure in the Mexican game. Huge figure in the Mexican game. And, this has a couple different effects. And Nathan Pugh tweeted he's a hardcore U.S. men's national team fan. He hates El Tri. So he's going to be rooting against Chicharito. I think you're going to get some of that. I think you'll get some of that around the league. I think Galaxy fans will obviously embrace him, and I think Mexican-American fans around the country will embrace him. And I think this is a huge deal in terms of media in the Spanish-speaking world. Mm-hmm. And that's important. And that's where I think some of the comparisons to the Beckham move happen. I think it's hard to compare. Some have said this is a bigger move than Beckham coming to MLS. I would tend to disagree because I think the time was so different for MLS when Beckham did it. He was the first, and he'll always be that first one to make that kind of jump. The guys who came over at the very beginning of the league, like Jorge Campos and Marco Echeverri and Carlos Valderrama, had a different idea of what they were getting into. Beckham was coming into a league that needed that boost. I think the league still needs a boost. And I think Chicharito absolutely gives them a boost. And this is a good thing for the business of Major League Soccer. It's a good thing for engaging with the Latino fan base, specifically the Mexican fan base. But don't discount the Latino fan base as a whole here. I mean, this is a player who featured for Manchester United, featured for Real Madrid. This is a player who's played in two of the biggest clubs in the world, period. So he's a known quantity. And this turns heads that, hey, wait a minute. This is a big move. This isn't a retirement move. This isn't one of those kinds of moves. So don't even start with that nonsense. Don't at me with that garbage. But this is a move that when you look at the Spanish-speaking potential fan base, when you look at the Spanish-speaking media, this is a move that changes the paradigm of MLS in that world, 100%. And these are the kind of moves that the league needs to make when the timing is right.
If I'm 2NA and I know that they're probably, are they still doing, now that we are 13 minutes into the show, are they still all Chicharito all the time?
Yes. Yeah, they're still Chicharito right now.
Okay. This is the impact that you're having on day one of an anticipated signing. When he's in the league, I'm waiting for the adjustments to the television schedule and seeing how many times the LA Galaxy pop up on NA's MLS schedule for this season. And even if it's not the primary game, you're going to have a reporter on site who's going to be doing the live remote preview section of what's going on. You're going to have sound from him all the time. It's going to be, this is one of those moments where Spanish-speaking media are going to have that anchor that they can hang on to, and they will blow this up because that's what this move means to the league, to its coverage, to its partners, to the franchise that he's attached to the fan base, to their grassroots community, to all of their efforts. His time is going to be all over the place when he hits the market, and it is a chance for a reinforcement of the Galaxy's fan base and the Mexican community, the Hispanic community, all these different things. So when you have a player like Chicharito coming in, it's not just on the field. It is a pyramid of effect, and it is going to be all over the place. And 2NA, from a television perspective, is going to be pretty much what you're seeing this morning, except it's going to be in game days. You're going to have probably a dedicated reporter to the LA Galaxy because of this idea. And we've seen it in other sports with ESPN where they're attached to LeBron James in Miami and they were attached to LeBron James in Los Angeles. That's the kind of effect that you're getting here and the exposure that the Galaxy and MLS are going to be getting across the board.
Yeah, it's a big, big, big deal. I was trying to pull up the Galaxy schedule to see how many are going to be on national TV. Well, the opener is. They got that one
Yeah.
right. It's in Houston, too, which is going to be nuts.
Ooh.
And let's get into that side of it for a second. So, all right. First game, February 29th, 3:30 in the afternoon on Univision on TUDN. LA Galaxy at Houston. Full house at BBVA Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
What did the Dynamo do with it? I've seen one suggestion, and I would absolutely do this. Free Dynamo t-shirt for everybody in attendance. It's worth printing the shirts. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get a lot of people who are going to come out who don't care about the Dynamo, have no affinity for the Dynamo because you haven't connected to your community very well. And they're going to show up for this game because Chicharito is playing in Houston. That's a big deal. Give them a Dynamo shirt. Mm-hmm. Give them buy a ticket for an upcoming game and you get another one half price. Do whatever to capitalize on this. It's not just getting the one time. And this is where I think people have messed up in general with these types of situations. Make them leave the stadium with something from your club and also give them an incentive to come back to another game for your club. Don't run from it. Don't run from this because you're going to get fans. You're going to get a lot of people in there in Chicharito Galaxy shirts because those are going to sell like crazy. You're also going to get a lot of people in there in Chicharito Mexican national team shirts, Chivas shirts, Manchester United shirts, Real Madrid shirts, maybe some Sevilla shirts, West Ham shirts, all of it. That's all fine. That's fine. I think people get really bent out of shape about that. This is a different situation. Zlatan had that effect around the league to a degree. Beckham had that effect around the league. I don't think anybody has truly capitalized on it on the way it needs to. You know, you're now dealing with a fan base that is very soccer savvy. You know, people who are going to come out to see Chicharito love the game. You give them a good product, you give them a reason to get behind your product, they're going to come back. They might show up the first time and be cheering for Chicharito. They might not have come out to your stadium before. You give them a good experience and give them a reason to come back, you've added to your fan base. Mm-hmm. So let's look at the Galaxy schedule early on. They go to Houston day one, national TV. Big deal. Home opener is against Vancouver, March 7th, Saturday night. Saturday night for us, 7 o'clock kick out on the West Coast. It's not scheduled for national TV. I would be surprised if that remains.
Yeah, that's going to get flexed.
March 14th. Oh, yeah, by the way, the Galaxy are the opponent for the home opener for Inter Miami, and that's on Fox.
Ooh, wow.
That's a big one. That'll go over to Fox Deportes as well. So, March 22nd, Sunday, una más, TUDN, Galaxy hosting Orlando. So you've got a lot of national TV in the first month. Mm-hmm. And then you keep scrolling down and you look for the couple of games that are going to be big. You get the LA-New York battle with the Red Bulls coming across the country. That's on ESPN on May 10th. But May 16th, and it's ABC, LAFC hosting the Galaxy.
Oh, hello, doctor.
That's a massive one. Set for ABC. I wonder. Well, that could go ESPN Deportes. So there you go.
Yeah,
because you've got to have that element to it right now and add that in. Huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for the league. It's a huge opportunity for teams like Houston that are going to get Chicharito in their building and potentially draw some fans that, look, they've had problems drawing into the building. You have to capitalize on this. Don't just take a full house one time. Try to parlay that into more.
Yeah, and I think that this is the challenge for those front offices to treat this as a positive that you can turn and help out yourself instead of sitting there and being repulsed by all of the different Chicharito jerseys that wander in the door. You try to do this as a one-off. Yeah, okay, we're going to put up with it this one time. No. Take this as an opportunity to grow things in your own market with your own players. Take advantage of this situation and expose more people than you might have had eyeballs with in the first place. Give them the consideration to sit there and say, yeah, I think I'll come back. Instead of sitting there and saying, yeah, okay, it was a one-off and Chicharito's out of town and we're glad he's gone because he's not one of us. No, he can help grow the game in each individual market that he touches if the instant attraction that we've been going over with the TV look and the TV contract and the schedule isn't already there. This is a chance for every market to grow their game and get more people in the door, get more butts in seats, get your game exposed just as much by having him in the door as not. So this is on every marketing department that will see the LA Galaxy to capitalize on this situation. How do you do that? And I think that that's going to be something that we might need to monitor and keep an eye on this year, just to sit there and say, okay, who took advantage of this, who turned this into a positive, and who sat on their hand.
If you have the approach that, oh, this is a bad thing that there are people wearing Chicharito jerseys in my building, you're missing the point. If you're with a club and that's your mentality, you're probably with a club that's not drawing very well. Because when soccer fans who don't have an affinity to the home team show up to a match, you see it all the time. You see it in Atlanta, too. You don't see it in large numbers at all. But you see soccer fans wear their favorite jersey to a game, period. Happens. And if they're not, just completely bought into the home team, they might show up in a Manchester United jersey or a Barca jersey or a Madrid jersey. They might, and that's fine. It's an opportunity because obviously they're passionate about the sport. It is a huge opportunity. In this case, it's an even bigger opportunity because you're getting people in to an exciting event. You're getting people in with buzz. I mean, they're still going on 2DNA with now talking about the Mexican players for the Galaxy and Mexican players in MLS. But it's not even that's the thing, John. Like, I don't even think it's that reaction. I think if you don't pay attention to Spanish-speaking media, you don't understand how big of a deal this is.
Right.
And you should. You need to, because it's so critical for this league.
It is.
Because it's the biggest league in the country, Liga MX. Yep. You have people who will watch that and not go out to Houston to watch a game live. Because they'd rather stay home and watch Cruz Azul or Pumas or Chivas or Club America.
Well, and I remember when the Liga MX games came and were played domestically, what the crowds were like. Anytime a Liga MX team, whether it's Champions League or whatever, you come across and you have a Liga MX team here in the States, for whatever reason, the crowds are through the roof. That should be a big signal. That should be a big-ass beacon, pardon my French this early in the show, for any team to understand the power of Liga MX, of Spanish media, of Spanish players, anyone attached to the history of El Tri or what have you, what that impact has in MLS. It should be a big shining star, a big billboard that's got neon letters and lighting and big font size and everything. If you don't hitch your wagon to something like this and treat events as events and try to figure out how to improve your product off of it, that is a massive problem on you.
I don't think this will be as big of a move as Beckham, but I think it's going to be bigger in a different way. I think Beckham opened the door to a move like this happening, to the move like Blanco happening, to others coming in. Beckham changed the way MLS was structured. Beckham got on Good Morning America and got the league into places that it couldn't get to previously. Chicharito is going to have that effect in the Spanish-speaking world in the United States. Beckham didn't hit as much there, although he did. Chicharito is going to hit there. He's not going to hit as much in the English-speaking world. He should, and I hope people are paying attention and do it the right way, because this is that kind of a move. I think Beckham is going to be the bigger one just because he was first. This, at this time, is massive for this league. And if the league and the individual teams take advantage of it. The Galaxy have always been big. They'll be big. They've done this before. They did it with Beckham. They did it with Zlatan. They tried to do it with Gerrard. Robbie Keane was more on the field effect, but they've had superstars. I mean, they had Jorge Campos in the very beginning. They've been through this. They'll be fine. It's going to have a knock-on effect to the El Tráfico rivalry. It's going to have a knock-on effect to every team that the Galaxy play in their building this year. And they're not coming to Atlanta. They did last year, so that's not happening. But they're going to be in a lot of buildings around the league, and it's an opportunity for a big game feel, a big crowd, and to market your team to an audience that maybe hasn't paid much attention to you.
Yep.
And that can be on you, that can be on them, that can be whatever. Doesn't matter. Now you have that opportunity. Now that door's open, and Chicharito's going to open it for you. Forget the national team stuff right now. I understand how people bring national team rivalries and things over into the club side. I get it. But this move is huge because Chicharito could have went to different clubs in MLS. Probably. I would hope Chicago was chasing him. I hope others were. He could have went back to Mexico as well. I don't know if Club America was after him. I don't think Chivas has got that kind of money right now, but maybe. I mean, you bring him back to Guadalajara, that changes who Chivas are in a big way. Don't know if a Monterrey or a Tigres, who have the money, would have been interested in trying to make this happen. But this is another step along that pathway. He's not coming directly from Liga MX, but now you're getting Alan Pulido coming over, Lucas Cavallini coming over, Lucas Zelarayan coming over, and now Chicharito coming in to go with Vela. Like, you've got a lot of the top Mexican players, whether from performing in the league, who are known to the Spanish-speaking audience in the United States, like a Zelarayan, or El Tri national team players like a Jonathan Dos Santos, now Chicharito. You've got some of the top players from that market in your league now. And that's going to give you a huge opportunity to broaden this fan base, broaden the business, and give you a deeper foothold in Spanish-speaking media, Spanish-speaking entertainment, that can potentially lead to more dollars, more sponsorship, more everything. This is a massive, massive move.
Eric Schwartz has come in this morning. He says he might be doing my math wrong like at OSG Nelson. But wouldn't adding Chicharito mean the Galaxy are in the same 40p boat they were in last year? What solutions are there to handle Jonathan Dos Santos or Alessandrini?
They don't have Alessandrini. He's not under contract. That's soft.
So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to it. Like, they don't have. This is the third designated player. Pavone and Jonathan Dos Santos are your other two.
And I'm trying to scan down to see if we have any other Chicharito questions at the moment, but I think we are caught up in the Chicharito part of the program on the timeline.
Okay, so we're not going to go quite as long as 2-Day NA, because they're still going and have not taken a commercial
but we went a half an hour
on their show.
We went a half an hour on the impact of Chicharito coming into MLS.
Yeah, that's
without even thinking about it. We went a half an hour. Yeah.
Like, why'd you react that way about it?
No, I'm just saying that we went without even thinking, and we just went for a half an hour. 2-Day NA is still going. But, a lot of folks, I'm sure, would sit there and they would just take a couple of minutes here or there to sit there and go, oh, yeah, 9 million, 5 million, and all that. But to be able to break it down like this, I think it's important.
I'm not looking for a pat on the back. No, I'm just saying we could keep going on it. But we're going to transition into some other things because this does affect other elements. Because I've seen a couple tweets, I've seen them shared, and they made me want to throw things about people being angry that MLS is spending money on a player like Chicharito. It's the recycled tweet that you see whenever MLS signs a player who I guess is over the age of 20, I don't know where
Yeah,
the
because I haven't
actual
seen
cutoff
these, so
is.
this is new to me.
No, it happens. It's out there. It's in the darker reaches of the Twitter sphere and web and nonsense, because it's usually the people with about 5 followers, and they hate everything about soccer if it's not grassroots. And I love the grassroots game, but at times the lovers of the grassroots game think way too small. We've talked about Chicharito on and off the field. Yes, it's a huge expenditure. If you took that money and put it into youth development, put it into player development, put it into academies, you have no guarantee of the same return that you're going to get by signing a Chicharito, let alone more of a return. You have no guarantee of that. Might you, from a business perspective? Sure, you could. If you produce, 5 Alphonso Davies types of talents and move them on, maybe. But I think you're going to end up selling more tickets, selling more gear, drawing bigger ratings, drawing more sponsorship opportunities by spending the money in the way that they have. And this is something that I think MLS fans need to realize when you get into these conversations. Bringing in a Chicharito does not directly fund an academy, no. But bringing in a Chicharito, changing your bottom line, both for the Galaxy, who do invest a good bit in their academy and have produced talent, but it can also change the bottom line of a Houston Dynamo and other teams in this league, because you're going to get this big payday. You're going to get these opportunities. It's not an either-or situation. And I think this is something that comes up far too often. Let's add another element into the player development conversation. And this has been going on nationally, and it's come up throughout the years, but it came up yesterday when it was announced that Atlanta United got green cards for Ezequiel Barco, for Eric Remedi, for Franco Escobar. Turned them around pretty quick. Remedi joined in the summer of 18. Barco was signed in January of 18. Escobar was signed in December of 18. Got those turned around quick. That opens up 3 international spots directly. Atlanta has 4 right now going into the season. We'll get it more into international slots later. But you have a pushback now is, that takes spots from American players. And technically, yeah, it does, because these players are now counted as American players because they have a green card. Legally, you have to. That's the law. You don't really want to deal with that. So, yes, that's what you're going to do. Again, I don't think this is a bad thing for the game in this country. I think long-term, American players get better by being challenged, by being around these talents. If you're in an MLS academy and you are training at the same time, you're training after, you're called into training with the first team, and you're training next to talented players like this, it raises the game. It raises your game. I don't think American soccer gets better if you don't spend on players like Chicharito. I don't think it gets better if you don't have players like Barco, Remedi, Escobar in teams. I think it gets better when the top level continues to improve, continues to draw more on TV and in the stands, continues to draw more money, period. Because the clubs that are going to truly change the paradigm in youth development in the United States are going to be the professional ones. And I'm not saying just MLS. I'm saying the professional ones, because those are the ones that have a pathway. If it was better before, why wasn't the U.S. developing better players before? The U.S. is developing better players today. I don't think you can legitimately make the argument that American players were better before MLS existed, or before MLS signed Beckham and started spending more money in that regard, or whatever other thing you want to pull out as a benchmark. I don't think you can say that. Were there great players that developed? Yeah, absolutely. Tab Ramos, amazing player. John Harkes, Eric Winalda, we can go on through that era, and great players came through. But now you're producing more and more and more players that are at that level, higher levels. Now the game is in a very different place. The professional clubs and their success, that's going to help take this to another level. And what needs to happen soon is where it's not just in the MLS markets, it's the USL Championship markets, and we're starting to see that. You look at a North Carolina FC that has a great partnership with Castle. And I think where you see those partnerships, where you see professional clubs come in with a respect level for what's happened in their market before, the existing clubs try to add to that, not take away, that's where it's had success. But these moves, signing a Chicharito, getting green cards, I don't think that's a bad thing for American player development. I think it can lead to good things. It's all about how you use it, obviously. But I think it can lead to good things. I think limiting the quality that you're going to have in the top-level professional league in the United States by either not spending the money or not going through this process to get guys and take up domestic spots. I don't think you make the domestic game better that way. I think you limit the effects that can make it better. I don't think if you limited that, it would automatically mean American players get better. I don't buy that. It didn't happen. I think you need to do these things to continue growing it because we've seen progress. Still plenty to do, always, because look at clubs around the world. Barcelona's not producing talent like they used to right now. Manchester United's not producing talent like they used to right now. You haven't seen a class of 92 come through in a long time, have you? There's a lot of clubs in the world, top clubs, big clubs, huge clubs, that have developed talent that struggle with it because it's not easy. I don't think it magically gets better if you put limitations on the professional game in that country, because these are the players, these are the people that are going to inspire the next generation of kids. Chicharito's going to inspire kids. People are going to want to be the next Chicharito. People are going to want to be in Atlanta, the next Ezequiel Barco, the next Franco Escobar. You see it. You see kids say, I can play like that. I want to play like that. I want to be that player. I want to replace that player. That's the whole deal here. So when MLS grows, when USL Championship grows, when USL League One grows, when you get those kids in the building and you get them hooked, everything gets better, including the player development side.
I would think, and this is not just something that applies to sport, but business in general, everyday life. I would think that if you want to be the best or want to improve at whatever it is that you want to improve upon, whatever it is in your day-to-day, that you would want to be challenged instead of having everything as the status quo. You're not improving at that point. And if you are thinking that you're improving, it's against a very limited idea of that kind of a challenge. And I think here in MLS, if you want to improve, if you want your business to improve, if you want your on-the-field product to improve, the way to do that is to be challenged. And how do you do that? You have the opportunity for players like Franco Escobar, like Eric Rometti, like Ezequiel Barco, to be presented with the opportunity that they've been given, to bring in players like a Chicharito, who have the tremendous pedigree and can rise everything across the league that we've been talking about over the last half hour plus. I would think that if you want to improve, you want to be challenged. And these are just other ways to do that.
Yeah, and that's how it gets better. I don't think it gets better in a vacuum. I think it gets better through those challenges, and that's the key. If you don't have talent around it, potential talent doesn't grow. I think competition makes players better.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's key. And I think you see that there's still progress to be made. I mean, people have also wanted to question Atlanta United not developing its own talent. I've seen that come out. And, hey, it's something the club wants to do, obviously. That's why you invest in an academy. You want to have guys come through and break into the first team. That's just a no-brainer. You want that hometown hero. Miles Robinson didn't come through your academy, but he came in and developed here. George Bellows had an injury that set him back. Nothing has changed with his potential. You just need to see him stay healthy. Some players, as homegrowns, haven't made it. That happens everywhere. Happens any club in the world. Some are still there. Andrew Carlton, if he goes out on loan, it's an opportunity for him. Lagos Kunga went out on loan last year, comes back with a fresh opportunity. That's being a professional athlete. And especially in the soccer world, it's key. You have to take advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. Do moves like this, whether it's going out and spending big money on a Chicharito or getting green cards for players, does it limit the opportunities in the short term? Yeah, it does. Because it takes away a spot. But if you're looking at it that way, you're saying our players can't be that good. And what you have to say is we want our players to be that good. We want to get them to where they're that good. Because clubs are going to want the best talent, period. Doesn't really matter where it's from. Marketing elements do come in, obviously, as we've talked about with Chicharito. But in general, a team wants to win games. How do you win games? You have the best players. You want to have the best players, whether they are homegrown, whether they are brought in from another country, whether they've been here long enough to get a green card, whatever the process is. You want the best talent on the field that you can afford, period. That's how you're going to win the most games. When you have that talent and you are underneath that, developing the next generation in the right way to get to that level and surpass that level, that's where you want to be. It's not easy. Developing talent, there is no blueprint. Don't let anybody tell you that if you do this on this day, and if you do this year, and if you do this, then you will be guaranteed to have a professional athlete. Nope. There's no way to do that, because all kinds of things can derail a promising career. I mean, we have seen it across the board in all sports. It can be injury, it can be wrong club, wrong situation. It can be taking a transfer in the soccer world and going to a club that you should not have gone to because it wasn't the right fit. It can be being with the wrong coach. It can be all kinds of things. It can be individual mistakes that the player makes. All of it is possible. That's why there's no blueprint. But your idea is to have the top talent you can, and you have them interacting with your up-and-coming talent as a motivator for that up-and-coming talent to get to that top level and surpass it. I don't think your program, your club, your team, whatever, gets better if you don't do that. If you just operate in a vacuum and say, well, I don't want to go bring in this good player because I want to give these minutes to this player who's not as good but might end up being as good, I think you're kind of doing a disservice, honestly. You're handing something to somebody who maybe hasn't deserved it yet. Now, that's where evaluation comes into it. And we've talked about this when it comes to George Bello. The evaluation is he ready now? Or is he ready in a year? Or is he ready in 2 years? Do you need to ease him in? Or is he ready to start 30 games right now? That's down to coaching staffs. That's down to a lot of different people making that decision. And clubs that make those decisions in the correct way are generally the more successful ones. You know, you've seen players not get an opportunity at a club when you thought maybe they were ready. You've also seen players get thrown in at the deep end, and it's been too much, and it's overwhelmed them. You see that in all sports, but soccer, it happens a lot. It's a balance, and there is no blueprint to it. There is no looking at it from the outside saying, oh, this player is 18 years old and 5 months. They are ready to start. No questions asked. There's no way to do that. It's all about making the right decisions. And you want to have as many elements that go into it that develop the talent to the highest level, help you make those right decisions, and raise the game. Because you have to constantly be striving to get to the next level. If you're a team like Atlanta, LA, Seattle, Toronto, if you're at the top of MLS, you're striving to win CONCACAF on a regular basis. If you're the top teams in Mexico, as Monterrey was this past time at the Club World Cup, you're striving to beat the South American team, to beat the European team, to get to a final. You're always striving to get to that next level. You have to. That's what keeps you making progress. When you settle, when you say, we can't get better, that's where things get stagnant. You have to constantly be doing it, and every element goes into that. And I think green cards, bringing in top players, if you look at it as a bad thing for the young American player, you are saying that the American player can never be good enough. And I don't believe that.
No, I'm right there with you through all of this. I think that if you don't challenge, then you become stagnant, and then you set up a false sense of accomplishment, I guess, is the word that I'm looking for here. Where if you just are acting in a particular bubble and you're the best in that particular bubble, then, okay, really, how good are you? And I think that, to your point, yes, there is some short-term challenge to all of this, but I think it's up to the individual player when you sit there and you see players on a particular team getting green cards or, whatever, or being brought in. Yes, it does create a short-term challenge, but I think it's up to each individual player and each individual to sit there and say, okay, I can take this one of two ways. And then what do you want to do about it? And then that's up to that individual to try to get better, to be like those who have been given green cards or who have been brought in. You want to be like that guy? Okay, then match his level. And I think that you're right in that assessment. Yes, there is some short term, but it's up to that player who is being challenged and who wants to get to that next level to meet that challenge that's being put in front of them.
The short term is part of it. I mean, let's take the Red Bulls example, and let's take Tyler Adams. So you bring Tyler Adams through, you sign him to a USL contract. He's part of a big season with Red Bulls too, goes into the first team. You know pretty quickly his long-term future is going to be in Europe. And just so happens you're with a group of soccer clubs where you can make that happen. So you know it's imminent. The issue that the Red Bulls had last season is that, and I don't know what their decision-making process was, but the decision was to stick with what they had, give those minutes to players that were already in the system, and you would be able to match the production. And they weren't. They did not identify this right. Their decision-making was not correct, and it affected their results. You have to make that decision. You move the player on, Tyler Adams leaves, you have an opening for that role. Is the player that's next in line that's come up through your club, is he ready? If he is, you go for it. If he's not, you have to go get somebody in. And the Red Bulls stuck with what they had, and it took Christian Caceres a long time to get to anything remotely close to what Tyler Adams was giving you. Do they need to go out into the market? Well, it's something that they said that they did. They were going to. They haven't yet. They've decided to keep giving their guys through the system more opportunities. Now, it's resulted in two things. One, they're not winning the Supporters' Shield right now, and they did in 2018. That team to now, there's a big drop-off. You haven't seen additions. You've seen a lot of subtractions. The additions have been internal, a lot of homegrown, a lot of minutes for young players. The results have not been there. What you have also seen is that the spectators have not been there. The ratings have not been there. That's a balance that you have to find for your club. You know, the Red Bulls have decided to put that money into developing talent, which is definitely a route. You see clubs have success doing this. I think in MLS, you have the opportunity to have even more success doing this because of salary caps, because teams can't just go out and blindly outspend another one. You do have limitations on that. But you have to be able to evaluate things correctly. You know, when you settle, and if they settled and said, well, we're not going to go spend this money on players coming in from outside, we're going to settle with what we have, and we know there's going to be a drop-off. Supporters pick up on that. They decide not to come out. These things happen. If you get it right, and let's look at Vancouver, for example, who pushed Alphonso Davies through. Red Bulls, when they pushed Tyler Adams through. You can be rewarded both in quality of play, both in results, and then you get fans who are excited to see the hometown hero, the young kid from the program break through. You get that. But when changes happen, you have to evaluate it correctly that, yes, it is this player's time. No, it's not. And we come back to Atlanta on this. Bello has been a really interesting case because we saw him break through at the end of 2018 and get some minutes and do well. We saw him start in CONCACAF in 2019. I think some people have tried to spin it that he was awful in Costa Rica. I don't think he was awful. I think he looked like a young player in his first game in CONCACAF. There were other players who did too. Then he got hurt, so you didn't get to see how his reaction to that would be. So it stalled, not through anybody's fault because of injury. So then late in the year, the idea was you want to get him ready for the U17 World Cup. You've had the injuries. You have things going well at the first team level. You don't have to push him back into that right now. Plays with the twos, gets ready to play in the World Cup. The World Cup was a disaster for everybody. I don't think you're putting that on Bello. I think everybody looked poor in it, and I think whatever the situation was with the coaching staff, technical staff, bunch of managers changing with that group, it was a bad World Cup. It happens. So now you're coming into another year with Bello healthy, with an opportunity in front of him, but also the club has decided to pump the brakes a little bit. And that's not saying that Bello can't handle it, but it's saying, you know what, we don't want to put all our eggs in that basket. And that's why you have a player like Edgar Castillo in camp. That's why you've been linked to a player like Arzamendia. That's why you're looking to add a little more support on that left side. So it's not all on Bello. And when you can find that balance where you're continuing to develop the young talent, I mean, George Bello can be a U.S. men's national team left back. He has that Alphonso Davies kind of trajectory in front of him. Maybe not quite as much money. Who knows? He's not done developing yet. But I think he has that potential in front of him. You have to give him minutes to get there. But you also have to balance a club in Atlanta that has high expectations and wants to win every trophy imaginable and has a very demanding fan base. So how do you do it? You do something like this, it's sounding like, where you're looking to bring in some extra help, but that doesn't mean Bello's just going to play for the twos or never play for the first team. I think you're going to find minutes for him to continue that development. But You're making sure that you have cover. And that's the difference from what the Red Bulls did when Tyler Adams was sold. They didn't really have much cover in the middle of the field. And it showed. It showed in the results. I don't think it really served Caceres very well. And it also, in their case, I do think it showed in the fan base. I think it showed in the attendances at Red Bull Arena. All of that factors into being a successful club. The development is part of that, but I don't think the development works if you're not successful in those other ways. I think it's all a holistic package.
Yeah, I think it is choice D, all of the above, when it comes to making sure that you're a success on the field, off the field, in the community, in the environment, in a league. I think that you are correct in that assessment, that all of these things interact together and they're not each individually independent thing where you can discount the other elements in it and not be successful. I think that if everything moves together as a group, or if you want to look at it, it's like a bar chart or something. If everything moves forward, then everything is successful. You can't just have one section of the bar be way the hell above everybody else and consider yourself to be successful and or growing as a franchise.
I mean, I just saw this tweet come across. On this date in 2016, and I don't know if it is actually this date. I think it is. Marc de Grandpré was named MLS Executive of the Year with the Red Bulls. So 4 years later, attendance has dropped 22.5%. 22.5% drop in attendance when there's not many other teams dropping. And I know Red Bulls want to develop as much talent as possible. We know that's the Red Bull global strategy with this club. And it applies in Salzburg as well. Not as much with Leipzig, which is their top team. But they want to develop talent. It's not speaking to the fan base. And it's hard to stomach numbers like that. So, that's not even getting into the tarps in the upper deck, those kinds of things. No. I don't know the situation with bait and switch on Open Cup games. I'm not sure those details when you get inside of the Red Bull fan base, but that's a huge drop in attendance. You've seen the star players go. They're not spending on Chicharito-type talents. They're not spending on Thierry Henry type of talents, Rafa Marquez type of talents, Cahill type of talents. They're not spending on those anymore. They're not spending on the Claudio Reyna type of talents. They're developing talent, and where they've spent, it's been on a Kaku, and that's honestly about it. They've also, I think, to go along with this, once you get attached to a player, Dax McCarty gone. Luis Robles, gone. Bradley Wright-Phillips, probably the right time, but gone.
Yeah.
You get into those situations where once people get attached, not just to the up-and-coming talent, but captains of your club, they're being moved on. So you've had some success on the field, but man, that is a big drop. And that success on the field has went away, too, since 2018. Doesn't look likely to come back in 2020. Who knows? There's things they need to learn here in the new world of MLS. I think from where MLS was in 2016 to now, it's a very different place, and the Red Bulls are stuck in that era and haven't moved into the new decade just yet. So, lots of thoughts on a Wall Pass Wednesday in hour number one. We will get yours after we talk to Mike Conti. We're going to take a quick break. Get Mike on the line. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back, Soccer Down Here, January 15th. We've talked Chicharito and player development and big effects on MLS. Let's take it back to the Atlanta side of things with Mike Conti. What's up, Mike?
What's going on, guys? Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. What was your reaction to the more green cards? Were you freaking out about the international slots?
No. No, not yet, at least, because honestly, the Villasanti watch and the Arsenendia watch and, all the other watches that are going on right now have gotten so confusing and intimidating to me that I've kind of lost track of where the club stands on international slots. But I don't think people realize what a big deal this is. Even if you don't fill all the international slots, and I don't have a reason to believe that Atlanta United is or is not going to fill all their spots, but you've got a commodity now in the trade market where international spots are probably worth, low six figures in GAM or TAM. So you have a commodity there. It gives you a ton of flexibility to go out and sign anyone now where you don't really have to worry about freeing up an international spot. And that might be something that carries into this summer, where maybe the club wants to keep an international slot or two in its back pocket for the summer transfer window, which gives them, pretty incredible flexibility. And it's going to help them with U.S. Open Cup. I think that's a big part of all this, where you're limited in how many international players you can play in Open Cup. Green card players count as Americans as far as U.S. Open Cup is concerned. So it's going to give Atlanta United a lot of flexibility there. It is a huge competitive advantage for Atlanta United. And one of the things that I saw on Twitter last night was that the process to get a green card now is a little bit slower and a little bit trickier than it used to be. So it's almost like Atlanta United has kind of banked these green cards and in turn international slots, while other MLS clubs may have to wait a little bit longer to have the same luxury. So great job again by the front office. I have no idea who the immigration attorney is for Atlanta United.
Oh, yeah.
But I hope they're giving him season tickets at the very least, because he's doing some incredibly good work.
Heading back to the beginning of the week, Mike, it's training camp and everybody's getting geared up for things. Since this is the first time that we've had you on since training camp is underway, what were some of your big takeaways from getting everybody back in and getting them geared up for the 2020 season?
Well, it feels very positive up there, and that's good. That's what you want in your opening days of training camp. You don't want anyone to be unhappy or concerned or questioning, what's about to come. It seems like everyone is on the same page for the most part. The biggest thing to me is we've gone 2 days of training camp, and to our knowledge, no one's gotten hurt. So you're already ahead of the game from last year when Franco Escobar got hurt on the first day of training camp, and it cost him about a month of the regular season and all of the CONCACAF Champions League. So that's big. You just want to keep everyone upright and healthy right now. Good to see Barco came back yesterday. There's been a lot of hand-wringing over the Julian Gressel situation. We'll probably get more information on that on Friday. But I think what Darren Eales said on 92.9 The Game Monday should hopefully reassure a lot of fans that once this CBA gets done, they're going to get into a room with Julian Gressel and figure this out. Julian Gressel is under contract this year for Atlanta United. So one way or the other, this is going to work itself out for Atlanta United in a positive way. I really believe that. But, I like the fact they brought in Edgar Castillo. I love the fact they brought in Adam John. We've been wondering for a while, backup striker, what would happen there. Adam John had a great season last year in USL Championship. So I like the fact that they're giving some guys a look. And it's going to be a slow crawl, kind of a slow process to get ramped up for these preseason friendlies in a couple weeks. But I like the fact that, Frank even told us Monday, he's already scouting Motagua. This is not going to be like last year's training camp where the team is learning about each other and learning about its new manager for weeks and then going through the grind of all the injuries and everything else. This team seems very, very focused on Motagua, refusing the international call-ups. I think that's a good thing. Already scouting and working on a game plan for Motagua. Planning on going to Mexico even for a little bit of the preseason, I think is a very, very good move. This team has, in my opinion, a much better approach towards CONCACAF Champions League this year than they could have had last year, because at this point last year they were still very much a club in transition.
The two things that kind of jumped out to me Monday, and I think were echoed in some of the comments that we saw come out yesterday, you have a team that is very focused. I think there's a lot of positivity, but there's also a lot of focus on wanting to win CONCACAF, win MLS Cup. But you have a team that is building flexibility, but is also got maybe some different elements into it this time. Fresh was a word that was mentioned a lot. Yeah,
and look, they had a longer offseason too.
Yeah,
and it sounds like, and I know with Joseph you never quite know, but it sounds like there were kind of some lingering health issues from the end of last season and the playoffs that, that extra downtime actually can really, really help. Your off season last year was basically 1 month. This year your off season was almost 3 months. So that's huge. That's a huge difference. I think from a mental standpoint, it helps kind of reset and refocus you. But I think from a physical standpoint, we had talked about Pity Martinez, just the nonstop grind that he had to go through last year. You're playing for River. You go straight from River into Atlanta United training camp. You go straight from Atlanta United to Argentina. You get hurt with Argentina. You come back. Like the poor guy never had a day off. For guys like Pity to get a month or two off, and I'm not saying not doing any soccer activities, but certainly in a much less rigorous environment, being away from the team. Yeah, I would hope everyone would come back fresh. And I'm with you, Jason. I got that impression too. So, hopefully it works out in a positive way for Atlanta United. It doesn't work out in a negative way where players are rusty. But I like the fact that you're playing enough preseason fixtures where you can knock the rust off. And remember, too, Atlanta United looked like a super intelligent cyborg in the preseason last year. I mean, they were mowing down teams left and right. And then they got off to a very slow start in CONCACAF Champions League and MLS play. So what they do in the preseason doesn't necessarily translate to results in competitive matches. But I think they're going to get plenty of opportunities the way they have structured this preseason to deal with any kind of rust or any kind of review and reset remedial work that would need to be done in the off season.
I think results in preseason don't translate to results in competitive matches. There is a lot of importance in how they use this preseason, and we kind of thought that they would be scheduling more matches, and you've got a variety of different kinds of matches, which I think is good. You're playing a Swedish team in one at Bradenton. You're playing a couple of MLS teams there in Bradenton early on in the process. You're going to play Birmingham in a competitive friendly because it's going to be in front of a big crowd. It's a big opportunity for Birmingham Legion to prove themselves. Are they at the same level? No. But you're going to get, I think, a little more competitiveness out of them because you're playing in front of a crowd. We don't know what's going to come of the Guadalajara trip yet, but you've got a variety of opportunities that the results don't matter, but there are things to look for in these preseason matches that hopefully will carry over to Motagua and then MLS.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might have some guys kind of on tryouts. These preseason fixtures will be really important for a guy like Patrick Nielsen. It sounds like they're going to be important for Edgar Castillo and Adam John. They are very important. They're very good ways for the technical staff to evaluate where some of those types of players are and how they would fit into a potential regular season selection. So, yeah, I mean, I'm by no means downplaying the preseason fixtures. They are really important. I'm just saying, again, you've got a lot of time to figure things out as long as you stay healthy. If this group can stay healthy through training camp and really start to develop those connections that you talk about, Jason, and that chemistry, it will be a lot different going into Motagua than it was last year going into Herediano. It will almost feel like you have had a head start going into Motagua. And it neutralizes the advantage that a side like Motagua or a side like Club America or Portmore, whoever, would have because they're well into league play by the time they get into CONCACAF Champions League. I think that could be somewhat neutralized this year if this group can stay healthy through training camp.
When it comes to players who are at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground, Mike, who are you most looking forward to seeing growth, evolution, of their game continue to evolve when it comes to coming from 2019 to 2020? Who are you most looking forward to seeing evolve in 2020?
Well, I think Emerson Heineman could be a 34-game starter for this team in MLS play. Just as an example, I mean, I'm sure he's not going to start 34 games, but I think he'll probably end up starting 9 out of 10 fixtures that they'll play between CONCACAF and U.S. Open Cup and MLS and all the competitions that they're in. I thought we saw Heineman really evolve and develop and get comfortable pretty quickly when he came over last summer. And he's someone who became incredibly reliable for Atlanta United down the stretch. Without Darlington Nagbe in this team and with that midfield role still, the way Frank made it sound, a little bit in limbo, I think Emerson Heineman has a real opportunity here to maybe win that Nagbe role. It would play differently, but be someone who can step in for Nagbe and be the conduit for Atlanta United, from defense to offense. It's a matter of him being more comfortable and more in sync with the team that he joined in the middle of the summer. And I think the fact that he's been here through the offseason and now is going through a training camp will really help him grow. So that would be among players currently on the roster. I'm really, really eager to see Fernando Meza for someone who was not on the roster who just came in, because it seems like Meza is going to have an opportunity to, again, be a 34-game starter, be that center back pairing with Miles Robinson. And from what I've heard about Meza, it sounds like he can slot in and be that guy pretty quickly. But what are his similarities? What are his differences to the man he's replacing, Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez, and how quickly will he be able to fit into the club culture at Atlanta United? That, I think, is going to be fascinating because he's going to be an incredibly critical player for Atlanta United this year. You do have depth at center back. Anton Walks is part of that now. Jeff Lorenowitz is still here, obviously. I mean, you have depth at center back. But it would be really, really nice if you went into the season knowing that you've got your lockdown center back pairing of Miles Robinson and Fernando Meza in place, and they are ready to go day one. because Atlanta United really has not had that kind of challenge going into a season before where there's been uncertainty at center back. I'm not saying there's uncertainty now, but it's just Mays is a guy I haven't seen. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him and seeing how he fits in.
What's your take on the rumors about Chicharito to the Galaxy?
I think it's great for MLS. I think it's awesome for LA Galaxy. So like we talked about off the air on Monday, the Trafico suddenly becomes too big for the stadiums in which they play. You might be booking the Rose
Bowl and the Mausoleum, brother.
Yeah. Or, hey, I mean, the new Rams and Chargers stadium will be open in August, maybe even there.
Cronky World, yeah.
I think, obviously it's awesome for MLS. I think it creates a really neat storyline potentially with the All-Star game, where you're going to be playing Liga MX. It absolutely creates some intrigue for what are they calling it? Leagues Cup, the Liga MX MLS tournament that Galaxy is in. It's called Leagues Cup, right? I'm starting to space out on that. I'm sorry, guys. I've been with the Hawks too long. Leagues Cup. I think it obviously adds some intrigue to Leagues Cup. It comes at a great time for the league as they try to do more with Liga MX. I think there are a lot of other clubs in MLS that are going to look at this as a missed opportunity because I think there might have been a perception out there that Chicharito was not an attainable asset. And I think there are some markets in this league, the Texas teams, Chicago, they're going to be kicking themselves a little bit if they find out that they had a chance to get Chicharito into their club and they fail. But for LA Galaxy, it's amazing. I think it's great for the league. It puts a tremendous amount of starch in that Atlanta United road fixture out at the Diggity later this year. And quite honestly, from the standpoint of the Galaxy, I think we knew when Zlatan left that the Galaxy were going to go out and try to find someone of equal stature in the soccer world. And they're two different players, and they come from two different places. And they're popular in different regions of the world. But Chicharito is one heck of a replacement for Zlatan Ibrahimovic for LA Galaxy. Congratulations to them.
We had talked about it in hour one, Mike, that if Chicago did not pursue Chicharito and he ends up with LA Galaxy, that if you were a fan of Stalagmite FC, you really should be hot that your guys didn't pursue somebody like that because of what he could have meant to that market. I mean, this is a player where the 2 to NA, are they still going on Chicharito, Jason, by the way?
No, they've moved on to some other things.
Okay, but I mean, they spent a great deal of their first hour this morning when we were going simultaneously covering every aspect of Chicharito as they should. And I think that you have somebody like this. I think really, if you're Chicago and you're a fan, you'd be really hot if it finds out that they didn't chase him.
If that's the way it works out, and we don't know if it is. And I think you can add Houston Dynamo into that conversation as well. Maybe FC Dallas. It could also, excuse me, guys.
Bless you.
That's my equivalent of falling down the stairs.
No, that is not an equivalent.
It could also possibly be a situation where Chicharito said, yeah, I'll go to MLS, but only to LA. And I would respect that too. He's of the stature where he can call a shot in that respect. So let's wait and see. Chicago's done a lot of good things this offseason, and they're a club that I think is really heading in the right direction to be hopefully one day a big club. By the way, it's really under the radar. I didn't see it really anywhere other than your timeline, Jason. Frank Kloppis is an assistant coach. I love that. Love that. Miss him in the broadcast booth. I thought he was terrific on their broadcast. But I love bringing Frank Kloppis back as an assistant coach. I think that was a good move by them.
Yeah, it's a good move. They also did a buyout with Marcelo, so Chicago goes into preseason opening up on Saturday with 16 players under contract.
Yikes. Well, not unusual. I mean, DC, I feel like, was in that position last year, weren't they?
Yeah, they were in that ballpark last year.
I feel like they went into the Atlanta match with 19 players, 19 MLS guys at least.
Something like that, yeah.
So, not unusual. but they got to get on the horse a little bit. Now, from the standpoint of roster flexibility, Chicago's got a ton of it. And hopefully that means they have, a pretty discretionary amount of money that they can use, and they can sort this out and form a good roster, because Chicago's got to make a splash. I mean, they've rebranded. They're going to Soldier Field. I think there's some expectations now, and Chicago is in a spot where if they don't do this right and they don't go into Soldier Field and put a good product on the field, they could kind of hurt themselves permanently. This is a very important 2-year stretch for Chicago Fire, but looking at a glass half full, they have flexibility, I guess.
So we talked about it yesterday, managers who are feeling the most pressure going into 2020. Who are some of the ones that stick out to you that, maybe it's not a hot seat just yet? Because I don't know if there's anybody going into the year that's truly on a hot seat. But who are the ones who maybe if things don't go well in the first few months, that seat could get pretty warm?
Oh, I'll give you one that is probably way off the board. I'm probably going to get some heat for this. And I don't think this guy would ever be fired midseason. But if Bob Bradley does not win something substantial in the playoffs this year, I think there are going to be some questions in LA.
People have said that.
Yeah, I just look. I mean, he's a great manager, and they're a great team. But there's something with the mentality of that team that seems a little bit askew right now, and it might not be a product of coaching. It might be a product of just the guys they have in the locker room. But how many times last year, Jason, did we say LAFC lacks the ability to counterpunch? And some of that comes down to making adjustments within a match, and it might be a product of a lack of depth. They're a very top-heavy club, but you're in LA. The team across the street just brought in Chicharito. You have this unbelievably historic regular season last year, and you get knocked out in the conference final. You got to start winning something. You have to start showing results. So that would be one I would keep an eye on. Obviously, I think LAFC they could loaf through the season with the group they have and still easily make the playoffs. But I think Bob Bradley's going to be judged on what LAFC does in the postseason. Outside of that, man, I don't know. I mean, there have been so many managerial changes across the league this year. Like Thierry Henry, I'm sure is going to get a pretty reasonable amount of time from Joey Saputo to grow into MLS as a manager, and I'm sure there will be a level of patience there. I'm sure there will be a level of patience with Diego Alonso down in Miami. Same in Nashville, same in Cincinnati, where they've changed their manager. I hope Orlando is the same. I think they've been too hair trigger on firing their managers. I think hopefully they've turned the corner where they're going to be a little more pragmatic and patient. You have a lot of other clubs that are in great shape right now managerially. New England with Bruce Arena. I mean, he's obviously not going anywhere. Jim Curtin probably bought himself a few more years in Philadelphia. So, one other, I will say this, one other managerial situation I would keep an eye on would be Columbus with Caleb Porter. Only because they had a disappointing year last year. Some of the moves they've made this offseason have given you the hint that they're trying to be a little bit bigger in terms of a player for, some good international talent, trying to make some big signings. And I would say a playoff miss for Columbus a couple years in a row could potentially put Caleb Porter on the hot seat. But it would be hard for me to handicap right now, Jason, a manager that, if 17 games in, they're below the playoff line, he's gone. I don't know if I can really pick one out right now, because we've had, I think you have two columns of managerial situations right now in this league. You have a bunch of new guys who hopefully their owners will be patient, and then you have a bunch of established guys. Like, you're not going to fire Peter Burmese. You're not going to fire him. You're not going to fire Jim Curtin, like I said. You always have the situation with Red Bulls, I guess. I mean, but
yeah,
if they haven't,
that might be one.
If they haven't fired him yet, I don't know what they're going to wait for, right?
missing the playoffs. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a
but
weird
that's
year.
That's not a mid-season thing, right? Like,
well,
Vancouver with Dos
maybe.
Santos.
Well, they've had an awful team too. Like, I think the point, and after our discussion, kind of reflecting on it, I don't think this is a year where you go in with an obvious hot seat day one. I think most leagues, you go into a season and you're like, all right, this guy's on the hot seat. This guy's got to win quick. You know that going in. I mean, you could sit down and probably pull out 4 or 5 names for the NFL season in 2020 of guys
Absolutely.
who go in on the hot seat.
Yeah, Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn would be
Yeah.
one of them. Absolutely.
Yeah. Last year, I think we went into MLS with an idea of guys who were on the hot seat.
No
This
doubt.
year-
Veljko Paunovic was
Yep.
one. Wilmer Cabrera was one. He may have gotten a stay of execution based on being respectable in CONCACAF. Remy Gard obviously was. It was almost shocking that Remy Gard made it through the last season. So yeah, I mean, guys teetering going into last year. I just don't feel like you have that this year.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, I think Armas is one. I had Ben Olsen as one because he's been there so long that at some point, do you decide to move on because it just hasn't gone as well as you want, even though he hasn't had a ton to work with at different points in his tenure there. Savarese is one that if it goes south for Portland early, I wonder if that seat gets hot because their finish last year was pretty surprising with all those home games. They didn't do well. If the first half of the year is bad, is he on a hot seat? Dos Santos could be, but I don't think he goes in anywhere near a hot seat. If the first half of the year is bad, it could warm up. I don't think you see anybody fired before the All-Star game.
Yeah, and going back to Savarese, I mean, Merritt Paulson wants to win now.
Mm-hmm.
And, Portland had – I almost feel like they had a free pass last year to do anything because they were on the road the first half of the year. They were coming off an MLS Cup final. Like, they could have missed the postseason entirely. It wouldn't have been a big deal because it was excusable. I still contend that Portland's issue is not with the manager. It's with roster construction. They're just getting old, and their window is closing and may even be shut. But I don't know. I don't know if that's Savarese's fault. But I could see where you're going with that. Merritt Paulson is a guy who is not going to tolerate losing. And I don't expect them to get off to a slow start, but if they did, that could be one. That's a good shout.
Who, Mike, we've talked about hot seats and things like that. Let me go out to lane 8 for my next question. Who do you think could be a surprise in 2020 that we're not looking at right now, is nowhere on our radar, that could come up and pop up and surprise and perhaps be in the playoff picture? Maybe just be like a 6 or a 7. Who do you think could be a biggest surprise category in 2020?
Oh, well, let's start with the teams that didn't make the playoffs last year. I mean, it sounds like you're talking about who's going to make that jump from last year to this year.
Yeah. And you could also include Inter Miami and Nashville in your discussion if you want.
Yeah, I'm not expecting a whole lot from Nashville. I am expecting a lot from Miami, but I don't think that'd be a surprise. Like, SKC is a team that missed the playoffs last year, but because they were so injured,
right.
You expect as they get healthy that they're going to be right there, but I don't necessarily know if that qualifies as a surprise. I mean, what would be a surprise is if a team like Vancouver were to be a contender all of a sudden, or if a team like Cincinnati were to be a contender all of a sudden. I think you're going into this season with out of 26 teams, I feel like probably you're feeling like 23 or 24 of them have really good puncher's chances to make the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I had like 19 or 20, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nashville and Vancouver are the ones that I just really don't have very high expectations for. Other than that, like even in the East, I think Columbus will be better. I think Orlando will be a lot better. I think New England could be a contender to win the Eastern Conference in the regular season. I think they could be excellent. Montreal is a real wild card with what they've done and with bringing in Thierry Henry. I would say this. I think I would be more expectant of a team that was up at the top last year to fall. And that could be New York City. It could be DC because we don't really know what they're going to look like yet. It's hard, John. It's really hard to answer that because the rosters aren't done.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like in the NFL when you play the Super Bowl and the next day you're like, okay, well, who's the favorite for 2020? Well, you haven't had the draft, you haven't had free agency yet. You don't know what these teams are going to look like. You have a little bit better idea in MLS. I mean, you're probably 60 to 70% there as far as what all these rosters are going to look like. But I think there are still some big moves coming. And I mean, I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. If DC goes out and they actually do sign Luka Modric, then the entire conversation changes in the Eastern Conference, doesn't it? So yeah. I think it's a little hard to go there now. I think it's probably a better question in February. And a lot of it has to do with how the CBA is going to work out as well, because if the TAM rules are softened and clubs suddenly have a lot more money to spend, then it's kind of open season for every team in this league to go out and get better.
If I'm going to go with a team outside of the obvious ones, and you look back at last year, the team that was not the worst, because I don't have anything to put on Cincinnati making the playoffs. I don't have anything to put on Vancouver making the playoffs. The next worst team from last year was Orlando, and I could see them making the playoffs this year. They're probably the longest shot coming in that I could buy that.
Yeah, I guess I just don't think that would be a surprise because...
I think it would.
Really?
They've never been there. They were bad last year. You're getting Oscar Pereja, but he's not Superman. I don't think he has the cape. You've got a lot to do, and you've added some good players, but you look at who's ahead of them in the East. New York City, Atlanta, Philly got Jamiro Montero back, which was a huge get. Toronto was in the final last year. You expect them to add somebody either in the summer or before the season to replace Bradley as a DP. DC was 5th. Red Bulls was 6th. New England was 7th with a bullet. You've got Columbus that was one of the best teams in the second half last year and has really added a lot of pieces. There's a lot for Orlando to overcome. I think if they got in, it would be a surprise.
Fair enough. I just look at a team with Nani and some of the other moves that some of the other moves that they have made. I think they could be pretty good if they're patient. I also don't know what their schedule looks like. I mean, I could look at it right now, I guess.
Would you consider Houston a bigger surprise?
Yes. Yes, I would. I would.
Those are the two that are towards the bottom, further down from last year that I could see pulling it off. That would maybe be the biggest surprises.
Yeah. Houston, I just feel like they're going to be a lot different under Tab Ramos than they were under Wilmer Cabrera. And I feel like it could take them a long time to sort that out. Houston could be a team that I could see getting off to a very slow start.
Maybe. I've got high hopes for Tab Ramos, so we'll see how it goes. Like you said, there's still a lot of stuff to happen between now and even the first preseason games, and New York City kicks that off this weekend. So we'll have plenty to talk about. We'll have plenty to talk about this afternoon on Stoppage Time.
That's right, 2 o'clock on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page, and we'll have all your up-to-the-minute training camp stories as they emerge. No open media today, so I don't think we're going to get anything new today. But we'll talk about what we've learned in the first 2 days.
Cool. Well, I will see you this afternoon, and hopefully everybody watches on facebook.com/929thegame.
Sure hope so. Okay, see you guys.
Be good.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with your Twitter comments and questions right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apelinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. January 15th. It's a Wednesday. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday, which means you guys throw some questions and comments on Twitter, and we try to give you that perfect through ball.
Now, this might be something for the remainder of the show, and it might also be a carryover into Thursday Thoughts. It is this philosophical of a question presented to us by Thomas Gwynn. Best wall pass of all time. Joseph Nagbe Joseph versus the Philadelphia Union with a question mark.
Well, no, it's not the best of all time, but it might be the best in Atlanta United history. Because there's not a best of all time. I mean, I might have one, you might have one, Thomas might have one, everybody else listening might have one. I think it's the best one in Atlanta United's history. I can't think of another one to truly compare it to. And it's a prime example of the wall pass because, you know, Joseph picks that up after a pass from Pitti, plays Nagbe, first time back to Joseph, and he puts it away. The wall pass is that first time back to the player who gave you the pass originally. So, I mean, it's up there. We're not going to spend 30, 40 minutes on it because, you know, John, how many examples do you have other than that one?
The first one that popped into my head was Joseph to himself against Cincinnati.
That's not a wall pass. You can't wall pass to yourself. Come on, man.
But I do like the Joseph Nagbe Joseph with Philadelphia. But yeah, I was thinking that you could wall pass to yourself.
How do you wall pass to yourself?
You send it up in the air, it goes off another player that doesn't have to
send it up in the air. We've talked about this many times. The wall pass is the give and go. You can't give and go to yourself.
Not even if it goes off another player.
No, because that's not. They have nothing to do with giving or going. You're creating new things again. You're like what did you call a nutmeg one time? You called it a gates or something.
Yeah. You gated somebody. You've never heard of that.
Nobody calls it that. Nobody calls it that. Nobody's ever called it that. That makes any sense.
So when I was at soccer camp,
when?
1894.
Yes.
And one of the players that was with me at the time turns to our instructor and was shocked that I went 5-hole on somebody and completely and totally nutmegged him and turned to him and said he gated him and was completely and totally shocked. It was like my move of the entire camp. I can't use the term gate
Because somebody at a soccer camp in who knows when said that you gated somebody does not make it a legitimate term. No. Because I've never heard that term anywhere else. And a wall pass is an accepted term, and you're trying to change the definition of it, which is not acceptable. It's not allowable. You can't wall pass to yourself. Okay. It is the equivalent of playing a ball off the wall to yourself, but somebody has to play the role of the wall. That's the wall pass.
Even if it's an opposing
Stop
player.
trying to come up with excuses, John. Stop.
No. Fine.
You can't. There's no even if. You can't wall pass to yourself because you don't have a wall in the game to play off of. The wall pass is what Nagby did. You can't do that to yourself.
Tyler Rollison this morning. Can you explain the ins and outs of how players' rights work in MLS? I often hear about a team owning the, quote, MLS rights, end quote, to a certain player. Do teams get those rights when signing a new player, young player, paying a certain amount? Please help. Hashtag WallPassWednesday.
There's not a... I don't think there is a true definitive way to put this. I'll give you the best impression I have. So, all right. You have a player's right. Let me think of an Atlanta United situation. Man, they're all so different, so it's not an easy thing to truly define. Benazé is one that's come up here lately. So Benazé was on loan to Toronto last year. They negotiated an extension to the loan and or a purchase. They did not come to an agreement, but because they made a bona fide offer, which is something that comes up a lot, they were able to retain his rights within the league. Now, this was a player who was contracted outside the league until that club made the decision to sell the player to Colorado. But because his rights within the league were held by Toronto because they made that bona fide offer, then Colorado had to acquire his rights from Toronto. I don't like it, to be honest, because there's so much up in the air about it. Like, what exactly is a bona fide offer? I mean, I guess it's something that you know it when you see it. I don't like rules that have that type of, lack of clarity. So how do you maintain it? There's not exactly a way. I guess when you make that offer, MLS says, okay, that qualifies as a bona fide offer.
That's a bona fide offer.
What?
That's a bona fide offer.
I guess. I mean, if you make a bad offer, you don't get those rights. That's the stuff where it just gets so complicated. And that's another level of confusion that MLS has baked into it that doesn't need to be there. Then you get into situations like a Justin Merrim, who, trying to remember, was his option declined or was he out of contract? I think his option was declined. Now, there was negotiation. According to Atlanta United, Justin Merrim didn't, say that he wasn't coming back until fairly recently. Does Atlanta have his rights within the league? How long do they have his rights? Did they do enough of it? Did they make enough of an offer to keep his rights, or can he sign anywhere? This is where you get into really confusing situations within the league that don't need to be that. I think you could basically set a time where, a player's rights are held until the next season starts. And you have a start date for the season. Maybe that's when training camps open. I don't know. There's things that MLS does that confuses people like this one that I wish they could get away from. I understand the concept behind keeping the player's rights. I get it when you get into situations like a player retires and they might come back and you keep their rights for a period of time. I think with MLS being, an international league, you should get away from this. Liga MX has a similar type of situation too that they need to get away from. When a player leaves the league, they leave the league. And when they come back, then they should be fair game to everybody. The Benazet one's a little interesting because he just left, but I think when they leave the league, their rights are renounced. They should be. And when they're out of contract and that negotiating period has ended, and maybe you need to define that. When that's ended, it's ended. And their rights are not held anymore. The only time I think I get some of the rights is when you're talking about homegrowns, when a player decides to go to college, doesn't sign that deal, but you've put that time into developing them. And there's a clearly defined scenario there. You can sign them to a homegrown deal up until they are in the draft. And if they decide to come out early, you have the first right to sign them to a homegrown deal rather than them signing a Generation Adidas deal, for example. If they decide not to come out early and they play through their eligibility, you can sign them and keep them out of the draft. But there's kind of a drop-dead date, when they go into the draft, hey, then your rights are gone. That one, I understand how the rights work in that case, and that I'm good with. But when players are out of contract, they're out of contract. When they leave the league, they leave the league. I don't think we need these $100,000 in allocation money going from Colorado to Toronto because Toronto had the player, but then decided not to bring the player back according to the terms of the deal they had. But they made a good enough offer to keep their rights and get $100,000 in allocation money.
Yeah. Yeah, not a fan of that one.
It's too complicated.
Jeremy York and our friends at Impact. Hashtag Wallpass Wednesday. Morning, guys. You guys both like Portland this year as a cup favorite in the West. What are you seeing with their early team that helps make that argument? Hashtag Timbers.
Because they're talented, because they were there in 2018, and I thought they should have been in 19, and I don't know why they were not there at the end of the season. Don't know what happened. It's a big question, but talent-wise, I think they had it. I mean, the Brian Fernandez scenario last year definitely affected them in the postseason, and maybe it affected them down the stretch because they did not pick up the points at home that they should have. That can't happen again this year. And I think Portland's the team that could go either way. I think they're a favorite in the West because I think Diego Valeri is still that guy. I think Sebastian Blanco is still that guy. I think the Jimmy Chara addition can be a good one. Mm-hmm. Abobasi, you would expect to make that step up when he's healthy. I think you have a good squad. And when you look at LAFC, Sporting Kansas City, now the Galaxy with Chicharito when that deal's officially announced, it feels like Portland is right there with them. But if they play like they did in the last couple of months last season, they won't be. And then I think Savaresi's job becomes at risk. That's right. That's why I look at it as they are a favorite because of the talent they have, because of what we have seen from them, but there are question marks because of what we last saw from them, and they could go either way.
Daniel Price has checked in this morning, complete with photograph. Just a quick check into the SDH verse. We are home, and I'm at a level of exhaustion never been witnessed. The future star for the USWNT is happy and healthy. And he's used multiple hashtags, Wallpass Wednesday, Tuesday Thoughts, Thursday Thoughts, and the last hashtag is I have no idea what day it is anymore.
Sounds about right.
So congratulations that everyone is back home and healthy. The Soccer for Good OG got a laugh this morning over the fact that I said big-ass beacon on the air. So you got that going for us. We are officially caught up on the Twitter, sir. What else is in your news and notes?
We've got a few things to touch on. DC got the deal done with Edison Flores. Undisclosed transfer fee, although it's being reported at $5 million. Contract $2 million per year over 5 years, including options. Peruvian international, 12 goals, 6 assists in 47 matches with Morelia. He is a winger, but he can also play as a number 10, and I think in DC's team it might be best if he plays as a 10, potentially even a second forward, but that's pretty much the same thing depending on your tactics. So he can play anywhere across the front line, and he goes into a team that needs it, but a team that still has Ola Kamara, Paul Areola, Yamil Assad, Junior Moreno pushing forward out of the holding midfield. You've got Emmanuel Boateng in this group as well. You've got Ulisses Segura. It's not bad. Still room for improvement, but it's not bad. Flores could be a really good addition. And $5 million transfer fee, contract $2 million per year, that's not crazy. That's manageable. You can make that work. So good get. We'll see what else they go do out in the market, and we'll see how Flores adapts to the league. I think he could be a good one. Seattle added a center back, so they have two now under contract. Shane O'Neill, who spent last year with Orlando after some time in Europe, started his career with Colorado. I like O'Neill. He didn't have a great year with Orlando last year, but really not many people did, so you don't know how much to hold against him for that. He's a veteran. He's been around the block. He's the kind of player Seattle had to go get right now. If it's him and Xavier Arriaga at center back, you are potentially able to keep Gustav Svensson in the midfield. Although, with other rumors out there, maybe that won't be the case, because in Brazil, Esporte is reporting that Seattle's made a bid of about $4 million for holding midfielder Gregore, who is at Bahia. He's played 69 matches over the last couple of seasons, mid-table team in Brazil's Serie A. It would be $4 million for 80% of his rights. Reportedly, their first offer was $1 million, and it was turned down. Gremio could be bidding for him as well. So it's still up in the air, but if Seattle goes out to get him, then you're potentially moving Svensson to the back line, because you'd probably play Gregore and Christian Roldan in the holding midfield. I don't know if Schmetzer maybe sees Roldan as a player who could play elsewhere, but there's not a lot of places for him to play, because you work from the front to the back. Raul Ruidiaz, Nico Ladero, Jordan Morris, Jovan Jones, or Hendwa Labana, or Harry Shipp on the left side. There's really nowhere for him to go up into the team if you're rolled on. So he's probably going to be that number 8. If it's Gregore, then you're going to play Svensson as a center back. Then O'Neill becomes a depth piece, which is fine. And that's not a bad lineup if you go with that. If you go with Seattle's 4-2-3-1 of let's keep it that way for now. So Nuhu at left back, Arriaga, Svensson at center back, Leerdam at right back. They get Gregore with Roldan at holding midfield, Jovan Jones at left wing, Jordan Morris at right wing, Ladero as the 10, Ruidiaz up top. It's better. It's better. O'Neill doesn't change who they are just yet. They've got to get either a top center back or a top holding midfielder, and Svensson can move accordingly. It's better. There's still no depth, and that's something else they have to address. But, you know, it's a step in the right direction for the Sounders as they build their team. Mentioned it with Mike earlier. Frank Klopas has joined the coaching staff for the Chicago Fire. Also, they've done the buyout with Marcelo. He was signed reportedly for €500,000 last year. Was on a decent contract, too. So Chicago has 16 players under contract as training camp opens this weekend. And not a lot to be excited about among those players. That's the bigger issue here. At least DC last year had Wayne Rooney, had Luciano Acosta, even though we didn't know how much the failed move to PSG would affect him. Chicago doesn't have any of that. They've got CJ Sapong, they've got Jordi Mihailovic, they've got Frankowski on the wing, they've got Medran coming in the midfield. You know, your back line right now, you're looking at some combination of Bornstein, Guchar, Calvo, and Kappelhoff. It's just bad. And I don't know where their tickets are right now, how many they've sold. Reportedly, not many. You got a lot more seats to fill, and you have nothing exciting in this group at the moment. Although the rumors that I thought were bunk, Rodolfo Pizarro from Monterrey, they're still being talked about. I don't know if there's anything to it, but Rafa Huesca, Mexican-based journalist, is saying that Pizarro could leave Monterrey for an undisclosed MLS club. Had been linked to Chicago. And that move could be related to the arrival of Ake Loba, who is coming over, a player that Nashville tried to get. Loba is with Monterrey now, so that could push Pizarro out and bring in a big transfer fee. I think it's more likely to Europe, but if Chicago is feeling froggy now after Chicharito goes to LA, they've got to do something with a bit of a splash. Pizarro would be that. Be a good addition. It's not Chicharito effect, but it would be a good addition to go get. It's going to cost you, and it might cost you more than it would have cost you to get Chicharito in terms of the transfer fee. So we'll see. He'd be a good addition. He'd be good for that team. He'd be good on the field and off the field for that team. With Chicago, I don't know if I believe anything until I see it.
Right.
And that's where I'm kind of feeling. But with Monterrey bringing in another player in that position, it makes it more likely that Pizarro would be on the way out. But reportedly, Europe was where he wanted to go. I don't know if MLS is where he wants to go with this move. It might end up being the spot where the money is. We'll see.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to Chicago right now, sadly, it's I'm not taking much stock into any kind of discussions just because of how things have gone over the winter so far. So until I see something concrete, I'm not really going to have much credence into anything.
Yeah, we will see how this goes. LAFC has their goalkeeper, Kenneth Vermeer, coming over from Feyenoord. Feyenoord's Twitter account has announced this morning. 34 years old. Contract was going into the final 6 months at Feyenoord. That's why they're going to let him go. Vermeer is also interested in coming to the United States, according to De Telegraph. So they have their goalkeeper now. Tyler Miller not coming back to L.A. It's going to be Vermeer, a veteran, a Eredivisie veteran, coming into that team under Bob Bradley. So good signing. You know, you have a veteran coming in now. For a goalkeeper, I think that adjustment from a European league to MLS to CONCACAF, it's not as big of a deal. So I think he'll be fine. And getting maybe a veteran player as opposed to a young and up-and-coming player like a Tyler Miller could help them. Because Miller made some mistakes last year that cost him.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing where Vermeer in his adjustment time. That's for me. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah, for me. It's a good pickup. I know that Bob Bradley was, in looking at halftime interviews and things like that with Tyler Miller, there would be times where he would be less than pleased, and he would mention that. But all right, you've got your keeper, and let's see where we go. We will see.
Also, news this morning from Doug Robertson at the AJC. Atlanta United Academy player Efrain Morales will be training with Manchester United. It's an 8-day training experience. It's not described as a trial exactly. But this is a player who started with the first U12 group with Atlanta United and has moved on to this point. So 6'2", that's a big 15-year-old. 6'2", strong tackler, good passer, excellent technical ability, according to Tony Annan. Can improve his positional awareness, which is typical for a 15-year-old. Tony said that Morales is ahead of George Campbell at this age, which is not a surprise because Campbell is a player that was a late bloomer. Campbell was a guy who was kind of at the bottom of the first couple rosters with Atlanta United, who turned into the player that got a homegrown deal, not overnight, He put in a lot of work to get there, but he was not seen as that at this age. Morales is seen as a guy who projects to that 15 years old now. So this isn't something that happens all the time with Manchester United bringing players over. It's a good opportunity, and Tony and academy manager Matt Lowry will be accompanying Morales during the time with Manchester United. So Tony said, and this is the quote from him, "It gives us a little pat on the back to say we are doing a decent job producing players that can play in the world's best leagues." Good recognition of what the work the academy's doing, and when you're looking at those guys who started in the academy day one at the U12s, getting to this stage now, that shows, I think, the progression and the quality of work that's been put in.
No doubt, and that's a really cool thing to see happen, and have it attached to Atlanta United.
So a lot of stuff coming on NWSL. We'll get deeper into it tomorrow, but they had their board of directors meeting yesterday. Jonathan Tannenwald has written about it at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Meg Linehan has written about it at The Athletic. Lots of things up in the air sounds more negative. I don't think it's that, but there are a lot of things that have yet to be decided when it comes to the NWSL in 2020 and beyond. You've got media rights agreements that Octagon is working with them on, close, but not done yet. So you have a commissioner that needs to be hired, and you've got candidates, and you've had big conversations, not done yet. You've got that pathway to expansion, not done yet, but you have the hope that the league wants to be at 14 teams by 2022. And it's said that the number of interested potential owners outnumbered the remaining expansion markets. So you've got more people interested than those spots to get to 14 and 22. Good spot to be in. Meg Linehan's piece at The Athletic has a lot of information from Chicago Red Stars owner Arnim Whistler. So check that one out over at The Athletic. Great work there. The Athletic's been killing it this week with our friend Felipe Cardenas, but also Meg Linehan, Pablo Maurer, Jeff Roeder. So many big bits of information there that you need to get that subscription to keep up with all the latest. We'll get deeper into NWSL tomorrow. Their draft is tomorrow, and it's a big one, and you're seeing a lot of trades. You're seeing a lot of moves. The draft has a lot more meaning in the NWSL because of how important the college game is in developing female talent. It's not as important on the men's side. It's more important on the women's side. So that draft will have a big say in which teams will be strong in 2020. So we'll give you the lay of the land in the NWSL tomorrow. Later this afternoon, stoppage time, 2 o'clock, facebook.com/929 the game. Also, I'll be on with Andy Bunker and Randy McMichael at 1:20, and I'll be on for the rest of that hour, the AMA starting at 1:40. So if you have other questions, crazy questions, Atlanta United questions, whatever, tweet them at all of us. Lots of stuff this afternoon on the soccer coverage side.
And look, and I've got a question that I was going to save for the AMA. Do you want me to save it for your AMA instead of releasing it here?
No, release it here because I'm afraid.
Notorious B.I.G. is a part
I knew
of
you were going to do this. I didn't even want to bring it up because I knew you were going to go there. Go ahead and file your old man yells at cloud comment. Go ahead.
No. Actually, I was going to ask you what your favorite Notorious B.I.G. cut was.
Oh, no. You want to have an old man yells at cloud comment because you've had it
actually,
before
no, I
in this
don't.
situation. Yes, you do. It's not rock and roll.
No, I have never.
Yes,
I
you
have never.
When
have I jammed on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame being more of a music Hall of Fame?
I will go back and find the dates for you because we've had that conversation.
Right.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Maybe I've mellowed in my old age.
Maybe so. Maybe falling downstairs will do that to you.
Yeah, really?
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees were announced this morning. Notorious B.I.G., Whitney Houston, those would be the two that some people have complained about. 9 Inch Nails is in it. Depeche Mode is in it. The Doobie Brothers and T-Rex.
About 9 Inch Nails.
Oh, you're going to complain about 9 Inch Nails now?
Oh, I'm not. I know. I'm saying a lot of folks would complain more about 9 Inch Nails than they would about BIG or Whitney.
No, you're wrong. People still do the thing of, it's not the Music Hall of Fame, it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That ship sailed a long time ago.
If you don't understand that it's more of a Music Hall of Fame, then you're missing the point.
Yes.
It's under the umbrella of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because of the centralized building in Cleveland, Ohio.
But why would you complain about 9 Inch Nails?
I mean, I'm just saying that I'm not complaining about 9 Inch Nails. I understand what Trent Reznor has meant to the music industry and what 9 Inch Nails has meant to heavy metal, hard rock, whatever you want to classify it as. I'm just saying that you would probably have more people. Category. Yeah, so you would probably have more people sit there and yell about 9 Inch Nails who don't understand what Trent Reznor has meant to the music industry than they would about Whitney Houston or B.I.G.
I disagree. I think more people are going to yell with the dumb, outdated take that it's not rock and roll, man.
But no, it's just I understood a long time ago that it was more of a music Hall of Fame, just under the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame umbrella.
I just want to see in the jam session that they always do, I want to see Depeche Mode and 9 Inch Nails, and some of the Doobie Brothers singing on it, covering Whitney and Biggie stuff. I'm down with this.
That would be an interesting mashup, sir.
Well, that's what these jam sessions are. You get those kind of crossovers that are kind of cool. Depeche Mode 9 Inch Nails crossovers are pretty easy, actually.
Now, I'm trying to think of what Doobie Brothers song that we would end up having Depeche Mode being a part of.
That one might be a little
China
bit
Grove.
harder. I don't know. Maybe. That one might be a little bit harder on the crossover. It's doable. Favorite Biggie song for me is Juicy, always.
Okay.
But there's a bunch. I mean, it wasn't a long career. There's not a ton of records.
Two
out
albums,
there, but
2 albums while he was alive, and then some posthumous releases, right?
Yeah. I think it was 1 double album, 1 regular album, and then there were other tracks that were released. And then you get into guesting on other tracks, and there's a lot of output, but not as much as there should have been. Because of a lot of stupidity at that time in the rap scene. So, unbelievable talent.
Savior of the East Coast rap scene.
Hmm?
Wasn't he listed as like the savior of East Coast rap or something?
No, not the savior, but he was one that pushed it through. I mean, Jay-Z went on and carried that banner for a long time and was inspired by Biggie. Biggie was the foundation of Bad Boy Records, which then whatever you want to call Sean Combs. And I saw somebody tweet that it was actually a pretty funny thing. You can tell how old somebody is by what they call him.
True.
What he's referred to. So, yeah. I mean, you can go backwards from Diddy, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Puffy, whatever. You can go backwards from all of that. He went on and carried it with Bad Boy, with a lot of other artists, but Biggie was the rock with that label. It was massive. I'm glad to see him getting recognized here as he should. Incredible lyricist.
That's why I wanted to ask about B.I.G., knowing what happened with the announcement this morning. I wanted to get your notorious B.I.G. take before we got off the air this morning.
Yeah, no, I'm glad he got in. I'm glad 9 Inch Nails got in too. That's a cool one. When you start to get into some of the alt rock stuff, and 9 Inch Nails doesn't fit in with a lot of it. Sometimes I kind of wonder how the committee and how the voters are going to handle some of that, but they 100% deserve to get in, and all of the things that Trent Reznor's done, and that band is still putting out good stuff. Great act, and it's more of people backing up him. It's one of those types of groups. You've had a rotating cast of people behind. It'll be interesting to see who goes in as part of 9 Inch Nails, because there's a lot of different individuals to choose from. But good to see them get in. I will definitely be checking out the ceremony when they air it to see the live performances.
Yes. Daniel also has a thought. He says, I'm not sure what Jason has more knowledge in, music or soccer.
I think it's definitely soccer, but I know a lot about a little bit in music. I mean, there's certain areas that I know a lot, but working in music stores.
In music stores, yeah.
And especially music stores. DJing is more focused, but working in music stores, you have to kind of have a broad base of knowledge. So, I know a lot about music. I love music. It's my second love. But, yeah, I would say I definitely know more about soccer.
Okay.
I can't get into the Doobie Brothers albums with you. Sorry.
No, I can't either. No, I can't. I can't really. I mean, I can differentiate between the Michael McDonald era and when he was and wasn't in the band, but that's about it.
That's it. Yes, that is correct.
It's like
I knew he was in the band
Michael
and not in the band, but I don't.
Yeah, it's like okay, was Michael McDonald involved in that album or was he not? That's about it for me.
Okay,
so,
good times.
Yeah, yes,
well, I think
good
that'll
times.
do it.
And T-Rex got in from the Veterans Committee.
Yes, and I think they deserve to get into it. It's a good call. They're getting better with this stuff as the Hall of Fame starts to evolve a little bit. Well, I'll be back on 92.9 and here in a little while. We'll be back in the morning with plenty more to talk about. We'll see if Chicharito gets officially announced and what comes from that. It's going to be a fun next couple of days in MLS world. So stick it out with us. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Mucho platiel.
Mucho platiel.